Hi again, 7th graders. This video is intended to help you through this lesson entitled The Conflict in the Theme, and also to help you with the essay question that is in the activities. So I will let you read through your objectives. Your activities for this lesson, you need to review Chapter 6 in The Call of the Wild, if you need to, in order to do the questions at the end. And you will be writing, like I said, a 2-paragraph scene exploring the theme of civilization versus the wild. And I'll go over this at the end. So, 4 vocabulary words. Foreshadows means that it hints at something that will happen in the future. An outlier means that it is something separate from the main body or it's on the fringes. It could be a single thing different from a larger body. So we'll talk about that in another minute. Primordial means something that has existed since the beginning of time. Rhythm is a beat or pattern of sound or a tempo. Okay, let's go down to For the Love of Man. It says, For the Love of a Man. Chapter 6 is an outlier in the Call of the Wild. Remember that an outlier means something separate, okay, from the main body of this novel that we're reading. So rather than focusing on violence, work, and wildness, the story focuses on peace, tranquility, and civilization. Many of the moments of action and violence are born out of a place of love. So here's an excerpt from chapter 6. Black Burton, a man evil-tempered and malicious, has been picking a quarrel with a tenderfoot at the bar when Thornton stepped good-naturedly between. Buck, as was his custom, was lying in a corner, head on paws, watching his master's every action. Burton struck out without warning, straight from the shoulder. Thornton was sent spinning and saved himself from falling only by clutching the rail of the bar. Those who were looking on heard what was neither bark nor yelp, but something which is best described as a roar, and they saw Buck's body rise up in the air as he left the floor for Burton's throat. The man saved his life by instinctively throwing out his arm, but was hurled backward to the floor with Buck on top of him. So, what does this mean for the central theme of the novel, the civilization versus the wild? Is this entire chapter simply a break from the rest of the novel? The key thing to remember here is that the central theme of the novel is set up as a conflict. The theme isn't simply wildness, but civilization versus the wild. The theme is set up as a struggle between two opposing ideas. For most of his time in the North, the struggle has been represented as Buck stripping away the layers of civilization. Buck has dropped his domesticated traits and found the primordial beast beneath. So, in the little gray box at the right, reminder. Although there are a number of themes in Call of the Wild, the central theme or the main theme is the main idea that runs through the entire text and gets at the heart of the novel. In other words, what Jack London is trying to tell us. That's the main point he's trying to get across, is the theme of civilization versus the wild, how the two compare and contrast. So here is an image from a 1903 printing of the book The Call of the Wild, entitled The Dominant Primordial Beast. Shows a pack of wolves there. All right, let's go down. Chapter 6 plays an extremely important role in that it clearly shows everything Buck has to lose if he gives into the wild completely. John Thornton is the perfect master. Another excerpt. This man had saved his life, which was something, but further, he was the ideal master. Other men saw to the welfare of their dogs from a sense of duty and business expediency. So, in other words, they took care of their dogs because they knew that it benefited their business. But he saw to the welfare of his as if they were his own children because he could not help it. So more emotion was involved um, with John Thornton. This is civilization at its best. Here, Buck could have a completely different life. In this chapter, the reader sees that the choice between civilization and the wild is an extremely difficult one. So Buck is at a crossroads, caught between two worlds. Another excerpt. But in spite of his great love, he bore John Thornton, which seemed to bespeak the soft, civilizing influence. The strain of the primitive which the Northland had aroused in him remained alive and active. So, in other words, Buck, although he feels love for John Thornton and he sees the civilized side of John Thornton and its softness, the um, the wildness of the Northland was still burning inside of him. Okay, so that's what that means. Faithfulness and devotion, things born of fire and roof, were his, yet he retained his wildness and wiliness, kind of like craftiness and sneakiness. He was a thing of the wild, come in from the wild to sit by John Thornton's fire, rather than a dog of the soft Southland stamped with the marks of generations of civilization. Because of his very great love, he could not steal from this man, but from any other man in any other camp he did not hesitate an instant, while the cunning with which he stole enabled him to escape detection. Consider the word choice in this passage, which shows an extremely important shift in Buck's characterization. When the novel began, Buck was a civilized Southland dog trying to adapt to the alien environment of the North. Now, his strain of the primitive aroused, Buck has transformed into a creature of the wild. He is no longer a dog who lives under fire and roof and who goes out into the wilderness. He is a thing of the wild who makes a choice to come in and sit by the fire. Next section, the wild will win. Chapter 6 clearly sets up a struggle between civilization and the wild, but the complete transformation of Buck's character foreshadows that the wild side of this conflict is destined to win. Buck is a creature of the wild now, and there is no going back, no matter how much love he has for John Thornton. So think about it. If Buck is in fact destined to give in to the wild, where else is it foreshadowed in the text? So think about other places in the text where it hints at something that's going to happen in the future, where the author hints that Buck is destined to be wild. So kind of look back at earlier parts of the books and see if you can identify the earliest foreshadowing that this might be the case, or the earliest time that Jack London hints that Buck is going to end up wild. He was older than the days he had seen and the breaths he had drawn. He linked the past with the present, and the eternity behind him throbbed through him in a mighty rhythm to which he swayed as the tides and seasons swayed. So, in other words, he feels in him all of the generations that came before him. He sat by John Thornton's fire, a broad-breasted dog, white-fanged and long-furred. But behind him were the shades of all manner of dogs, half-wolves and wild wolves, urgent and prompting, tasting the savor of the meat he ate, thirsting for the water he drank, scenting the wind with him, listening with him, and telling him the sounds made by the wildlife in the forest, dictating his moods, directing his actions, lying down to sleep with him when he lay down, and dreaming with him and beyond him, and becoming themselves the stuff of his dreams. So there again, he's feeling the ancient generations behind him of the wildness that is in dogs. So it says, take a moment to carefully read and reread this passage. Create a mental image of the scene Buck is describing. So think about all of the generations of wildness that is behind Buck. Pay very close attention to the words the author chooses. In the midst of the conflict between civilization and the wild, this passage tells us that for Buck, the wild has already won. It's just a matter of time before it consumes Buck or overtakes him altogether. Not only does the meaning of the words convey this inevitability, the structure does as well. The entire paragraph is only 3 sentences. Long sentences, yes, but 3 sentences. The first is relatively short, the second is relatively long, and the third is extraordinary, going on for 96 words. The structure of the paragraph creates a rhythm that drives forward. One description falls into the next, and it seems like it'll never end. The rhythm of the passage drives relentlessly forward, just as Buck's final march into the wild is relentless and inevitable. Okay? I am going to let you read through the Let's Review. And for now, we are going to skip down to question 3, which is your essay for this lesson. So, you're going to imagine you're writing a novel about the theme of civilization versus the wild. Okay? It doesn't have to be a book about the North or about dogs or sled dogs or the Yukon or anything like that. Just pretend you're going to be writing a book about civilization versus the wild. Okay? Now, you're going to write 2 paragraphs from that book, which are 4 to 5 sentences each paragraph, showing one scene in which that shows that theme. It can be an action scene or it can be a quieter scene. And use precise words and try to capture your theme through sensory details and imagery. Sensory details, again, are things that the characters feel, the characters see, the characters hear, smell, taste. Okay, and remember, imagery is figurative language. You're using, all of the figurative language that we have learned, like alliteration, hyperbole, metaphor, simile, personification, all those things. Okay, so you're going to be writing 2 paragraphs, a scene from a novel having to do with civilization versus the wild. Okay, it's not about Buck here. It's a scene that you come up with all on your own. Okay, so that's what you need to do. If you still have a question on this, contact me. Yes, you have to write 2 paragraphs, not just 4 to 5 sentences altogether, but 4 to 5 sentences for each paragraph. Okay, and good luck on this, and I will see you later. Bye.